This is our General Assembly of the IGF Support Association. As I said before the meeting started, according to our bylaws, we don't need to have a quorum as long as we have members on the call. We are able to make the necessary decisions. And in any case, normally decisions are taken by consensus, except for the voting for elections, and that we did in an online process. And this year, obviously, we were not able to collect your membership dues at the meeting itself. In the past years, we managed to collect cash the membership dues, but this was, for obvious reasons, not possible in an online format. So we relied on you paying your membership dues online. Now, we haven't done badly. We have a total of 257 members, but not all of them have paid their membership dues. But we have nevertheless received the membership dues from 49 members who are members in good standing. But and only members, as you will recall, who had paid their membership dues were able to take part in the election. But before moving into the substantive part of the agenda, we obviously need to adopt the agenda for the meeting. A draft agenda has been circulated in good time ahead of the meeting. Can that be shown on the screen? And our first activity would be the adoption of the agenda. Can the slide be shown of the agenda? Well, it's a straightforward agenda. Agenda item 1 is adoption of the agenda. Agenda item 2, approval of the summary record of last year's General Assembly. Oh, I see that Vince says we can see it. Why can't I see it? Well, if you can see it, that's good enough. I don't need to read it out. And can I take it that the members are comfortable with this agenda and we can approve it as it is? Or are there any suggestions for amendment of the agenda?
Hello, Marcus. In the chat, there are comments for you.
Hi, Marcus. You support the agenda, please. Thank you.
Yes, this is Aubrey. It does look like the comments all lead to supporting the agenda if you can't see them. We've lost Marcus.
Sorry, I had some connectivity problems and I was off the grid for a while, but now I'm back. And I'm not sure, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay, well, can we then go to agenda item 2, which would be approval of the summary record of last year's General Assembly. That is a fairly straightforward description of what happened. We also last year we had elections and had some discussions. And can I take it? Are there any suggestions or any requests for the floor? If not, can we adopt the summary record of last year's General Assembly?
Marcus, it's Vince. Sir, if I move that we adopt the summary.
As I don't hear any objection, I take it that it is so decided. And then we come to agenda item number 3, that is the Executive Committee election. We have some outgoing members, and there I wonder whether... Thank you, Vint, for that. Then does anyone want to second Vint's move?
I second Vince's move. Marcus, can you hear other people speaking? Vince, I heard you. I'm assuming you hear me, but I'm not sure that Marcus is hearing us.
Sorry, I keep dropping. I've connected. I should turn off my video to save some bandwidth. Yes, I do see the chat. So okay. So Vint moved to adopt the summary, and I asked whether anyone was second to move. And I think, as I didn't hear any objection, I just would like to hear someone who said they would like to second the move.
Every seconded. Marcus, every seconded the motion.
Okay, I take it, and the summary is adopted. And with that, we come to the Executive Committee. Okay, I will second it. Fine, thanks. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Well, we don't really need to be that formal as it is. We are operating under Swiss law, and there, if nobody
Aubrey, this is Jen. Would you like to take us to agenda item 3, since we have adopted the agenda and approved the summary record?
I think that's a great idea. So, and then hopefully Marcus can get his technical glitches sorted out in the meantime. So if you could bring up the slides for the executive committee. First, I should note that I was acting. Oh, you're back. Let me go on. And I'll wait for...
But I seem to have recurring problems. I keep dropping all the time.
Can someone help Marcus with the issues? Perhaps he needs to stop and come back in or something. I don't know. So anyhow, on the election process, I'm assuming people can hear me, and someone will stop me or let me know in the chat that I am also breaking up if I am. Great, thank you. Okay, so for the election process, just a quick recap. The payment of dues in order to be eligible as a candidate had originally been 12 October, but then it was extended to 19 October. Do want to mention, as Marcus mentioned, that only 49 of the full memberships that have paid. So even though it's no longer to do with the election process, I do encourage anyone that's listening to this and is a member to pay their dues and become fully paid up members again, and encourage anybody that's listening that isn't a member to join. So then we asked for submission of statements of interest to stand as a candidate. Original had been 15 October, but then we basically noticed that we went from four empty seats to 5 and extended it to 21 October. We had 8 people who put in statements of interest, and I'm very grateful to all that did put them in. So the payment of membership dues in order to be qualified for voting was 23 October. Ballots were sent on 24 October, and the deadline for casting the ballots was 30 October. And at that point, we had 49 ballots that were sent out. Election Buddy was used as an election platform. There is a document that we won't go through now, but can, if there are any questions, on all the details on the election process, on the tool being used, on the security, explaining the dates, etc. I'd like to stop for a second and just see if there are any questions on the election process before I move on to the results of the election process. Let me check the chat for questions. See none there. Let me check the Q&A. No open questions. Are there any hands up for this? I see no hands up for this. So moving on from the election process to the results of the election, if there are no questions. So in the election, 37 of 49 ballots were cast. That gives us a total of 147 votes tallied, and there were 0 abstentions. With 30 votes, we had Joyce Chen. With 19 votes, Brian Cute, going through these in alphabetical order. With 20 votes, we had Don Kaur. With 12 votes, we had Aiden Ferdinand. Sorry, I didn't say the first names. With 26 votes, we had Nigel Hickson. With 14 votes, we have Fortune Costa. With 4 votes, Raymond Mamata. And with 22 votes, Christopher Mondini. If I can have the next slide, please. The process was to take the top 5 vote getters, and that gives us a newly elected executive committee of, in addition to the current members, the new members are Joyce Chen, Nigel Hickson, Christopher Mondini, Wisdom Donkor, and Brian Cute. Again, I want to thank everyone that put their name forward. I'd like to thank everyone that paid and voted. And I'd like to ask 1 second here whether there are any questions or objections to this as I've read it out. Again, I will check for chat. I will check for Q&A, and I will check for hands. I've seen no questions, no objections. So I too would like to join those in chat who are congratulating our newly elected executive committee members thank you and enjoy your terms. And with that, I turn it back over to Marcus. Hopefully he's back on now. Otherwise, I would ask perhaps the Secretariat or another continuing member of the board, for example, Jimson, to take over the lead if Marcus is not all settled out. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Avery. Please let us appreciate Avery for that wonderful process. Thank you very much. I would like to use the opportunity to congratulate all the participants that took part in the election. Really appreciate you for offering yourself to serve the global community. And on behalf of all of us, we want to say congratulations to those newly elected officers, Joyce Chain, Nigel Hickson, Christopher Mudini, Wisdom Donko, Brian Coote. Thank you and welcome on board. And also to appreciate all the outgoing executive. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you, Marilyn Cade. Thank you, Edmund Chung. Thank you, Avery Doria. And Nimni Robin. Thank you so much. Well, I don't know if any one of them have something to say with regard to your experiences and maybe a charge for the incoming executive. Do you have any word? Anyone want to say something?
This is Edmund. I guess I'll just briefly make a remark. I'm very grateful and honored to have served on the IGFSA Executive Council since its beginning. Just looking back in the last 6 or so years, since 2014, I believe. It's been a nice journey, and hopefully the work that started with the global IGF and then into the NRIs, the national and regional initiatives, has been useful for the entire IGF movement. And as I step down, I'm quite excited actually that .Asia is continuing to serve as the secretariat for the IGFSA, and with my stepping down, that would clear off the issues of any conflict of interest, which I'm quite excited to see that, and I'd be able to continue to support the work of IGFSA as part of the secretariat team to support this meaningful initiative. So very grateful for those who've stepped up to join the Executive Council of IGFSA, and especially grateful for all the donors and members of the association, and now switching from being on the Executive Council to serving on the Secretariat. Look very much forward to really serve you as the member and as the council to make IGFSA work even better. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Edmund. Avery?
Sure, I'll say a few words. I've been involved with the executive committee since the founding. I've been very honored to do so. Have been very also privileged to work with both secretariats, both the ISOC secretariat that helped us in the formation and the .Asia secretariat now that's helping us carry on into the next stage of the IGFSA's work over the last couple of years. I was very happy working with both secretariats, worked with them through the transition from one secretariat to the other, and have served a couple times as an election officer, and it's always been a pleasure working with the Secretariat. So going forward, I am very much heartened by the future road. Now that I'm moving from the Executive Committee, I will remain a member, and I thank everyone who has donated so far. And I'll take this last opportunity as an Executive Committee member to encourage everyone to contribute. One of the things that we didn't succeed in doing, although .Asia did set us up well for doing it, was to get some campaigns going for smaller donations, for online campaigns and such. And so even though as someone that held that token and sort of failed to get that one moving, I encourage someone from the new Executive Committee to sort of take up that process and see if we can't actually get some sort of global source funding, crowdfunding for moving forward, so that the IGFSA can continue to help the IGF and especially the NRIs with their ongoing work. So thank you very much, and good luck to the new Executive Committee.
Thank you very much, Avery. I learned that Marcos is around, but maybe if I finish this phase, I'll just hand over to him if he's fully back. But Avery, what you mentioned is so key, but that's one of the reasons why we envisioned IGFSA at that time. We can crowdsource funding, and we still hope we will make a good outcome out of it going forward. I don't know if Marilyn is online, want to say something, and Nimni? Okay, so I'm not seeing any requests for the floor. I want to use the opportunity on behalf of all of us to thank you again, Marilyn, Edmond, Avery, Nimni, for all your services to the global IGF community. Thank you very much. Okay, it's Marcos on now. Okay, I haven't heard that, I'm yet to hear that he's back. So perhaps Secretariat, we can put on the agenda so that we can continue with the agenda. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is.
Thank you, James. I hope you can,
Marcos
also.
All right, Marcos, I give to you.
Vince's comment in the chat, but yes, thank you. Yes, no, I'm in a very temporary situation for internet connection, mobile connection, so that's to the defense of the Swiss internet. But I'm hear me now on the phone, and then we can move on. Let me also add my voice to thank the outgoing members and welcome the new Executive Committee members who have just been elected. Thanks for your service, and I look forward to working with the new Executive Committee members. Can we move on then to the adoption of the agenda item 4, that is adoption of the contents of the reports and financial statements for the year. And that goes back then to Jennifer, our secretary, who will introduce the report, and then Jimson, our treasurer, who will give an overview of the finances. With that, Jennifer, can you take over, please?
Sure, thank you, Marcus. I hope I can be heard by everybody. This is Jennifer Cho, Secretary for the Internet Governance Forum Support Association for the record. In this agenda item, we are looking at the annual report for 2019-2020. You can currently see this on the screen, and I will also drop the link into the chat, so you may also follow it in your own browser, should you wish. So give me 1 second to do that, and I'll carry on. In fact, I can't really see the chat for some reason, but Kelvin, if you can drop that also to the chat for members to look at, I'll carry on. The annual report is quite simple. We describe the activities we've done from the last General Assembly to this current General Assembly. We first have a description of what happened in IGF 2019, and just a brief record of what is there. General Assembly did approve the 2020 budget allocation. We did have an executive committee election last General Assembly, as you might recall as well. And in that election, we did have Mr. Marcus Coomer and also Mr. Eduardo Santoyo, both incumbents, being re-elected to the executive committee. And you see the full executive committee for the 2019 to 2020 here on the screen. I won't read it out. Throughout the year, we had 5 executive committee meetings. There were also quite a few committee meetings, communications committee and also the crowdfunding committee that were held to address some specific issues and initiatives. And as this year, as everybody has been doing, all these meetings were held in a virtual setting. Ari and also Jimson did mention earlier, Asia is currently supporting as secretariat. I myself do hold the position of secretary for the IGFSA. And we also have Michael Parrott retained as the IGFSA accountant. He is also managing our bank accounts, along with our treasurer, Jimson. And also 2 other executive committees do have access and approval status for these accounts. For membership, we have in 2020, 9 new members joined the association, bringing us to a total of 256 registered members. You can see the list of new individual members on your screen right now. I won't go through them. And we also received a new corporate member as well. In this part of the in this part of the report, we do have the fundraising portion. In 2020, we received a total of $70,000 in contributions, and this is the breakdown received as of the 20th of October. We received $20,000 from Google, earmarked for accessibility purposes. 50,000 from the Numbering Resources Organization, and you see there's $350 from membership fees, bringing us to the total of $71,350. For the budget and allocation of the fund, as agreed in a General Assembly held in 2017, the executive committee allocated the available funds in quite a flexible manner, prioritizing the national and regional initiatives. And this is really part of the mandate to also strengthen, seek and promote support and collaboration with the national regional initiatives, with a focus from NRIs, on NRIs from developing countries and economies in transition. So part of this priority, IGFSA contributed a total of $37,500 to the NRIs this year. Of that sum, $17,500 were allocated to 5 regional, sub-regional IGFs. and 22,000 to the 11 national initiatives. So you see, we have brought up the total of the contributions to NRIs to 495,000 US dollars. Currently, the funding situation you can see here is the UN IGF Trust Fund. We have allocated $10,000. For the national regional IGFs, we have allocated $39,500. For the accessibility fund, as we mentioned earlier from Google, there is the $20,000, and the contingency fund for IGFSA is $10,000. Now looking at this in detail, as I just mentioned, there's a contribution to the UN IGF Trust Fund. And this actually brings the total of our contributions to the UN IGF Trust Fund to 290,000 US dollars. We have a list of the national, regional, sub-regional initiatives here that we have funded this year. And you can see this on your screen. I won't go through them. And now it brings us to the outreach and communications and miscellaneous item. We made use of the virtual NRI meetings to promote the association and raise awareness to recruit new members. This year has been a little more difficult, but we did attempt to use a crowdfunding pilot that was launched during the Asia Pacific Regional IGF of this year. So with that, we've at the end of the annual report. I will pause here to see if there's any questions or hands, and I can also hand it back to Marcus.
So thank you, Jennifer. May I suggest that we hand over to Jimson, that he, in his capacity as treasurer, can follow up and fill in some of the financial details, and then take questions to both of you at the same time if there are any, or comments. Jimson, would you be ready?
Yes, this is Jimson Olufuye. I'm speaking from Abuja. I'm affiliated with Africa ICT Alliance, where I used to be the chair. And I run an IT firm based in Abuja here, Contemporary Consulting. So it's been a pleasure to serve in IGF SA XCOM as the treasurer. Well, I do not want to repeat the figures, but just to say that I would like to copy and paste all the financial details already incorporated into the report, very well delivered by our secretariat, Jennifer Chung. Thank you, Jennifer. What I just want to emphasize is, or really note, number one, is to really thank our donors, generous donors. And one of those outstanding donors is this great man you are seeing on the screen, Vincent. Thank you so much, Vincent, for your vision and commitment, technically, financially, I can even say spiritually, because you are an evangelist. So thank you so much. I want to thank the NRI, the regional operators, the NRO, and the regional numbers registries. Thank you so much. And all the other, even ICANN has been very consistent. Thank you, ICANN, and we look forward to receiving your support this year. As Jennifer mentioned, we really would like to do much more. We should do much more, but we hope that we can step up with our crowdfunding vision. As I mentioned earlier, that is very principal to us. and we need to do better concerning that. So we look forward to the new executive injecting new perspective in this regard. And as we noted in some of your SOI, your focus is on fundraising, which is principally what the association needs a lot right now. As you could note, we did contribute 10,000 to the trust fund, the UN trust fund. We also hope to do much better. In the time past, we contributed as much as 100,000 USD. So we would like to do more in that regard. So please use the facility available online to be able to contribute, to be able to make your payment. And those that are paid after this, the report was compiled, please take notes that your information will be fully captured going forward. I would like to thank our chairman, very tireless Marcus Kruma. Thank you so much, our chairman, for leading us very, very well. As I round off, I want to use opportunity to, maybe Marcus will talk about it, to really encourage our NRIs to send in their requests much earlier. Because most of the challenges we find is that when we have to do due diligence, we have time constraint because requests come in maybe a day before the event or 2 days before the event. And that might not be good enough. So we are supposed to do some due diligence. And then also, if we are doing the transfers, there are processes the bank takes. It takes quite a while. And so there could be delays. So for us to work to serve you more effectively, we'll be requesting that a request come in much earlier. Marcus will be giving us more details about that. And as I wrap up this session, I want to recognize the Abuja hubs, the AFICTA, and the host, the hub hosted by Microbus. So you're all most welcome, and all the hosts around the world, thank you for tuning in. So I will hand it over to Marcus now. Marcus, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Jensen. And I would like to thank you for your diligent work, and also thank Jennifer for her report. Obviously, this year was a highly unusual year. We all found ourselves in the same situation with all of a sudden we were not able to meet in person, was all online, and was also, I think, more difficult than in past years to mobilize funding. And I would like to join Jameson in thanking those who gave us some funds and been present here on this call on behalf of Google. And we also had ICANN that gave us some funding. But yes, we would like to do more and get more out of it. And that's also, I think, very much linked to the next agenda item. But I would like to ask participants on the call whether they have any questions, comments, suggestions. I cannot see you if you have your hand up, so I suggest you just say your question without even asking for the floor. Or Jimson, can you maybe manage to queue if there is any? That would be very kind of you.
Okay, the questions have been answered so far by Kevin. Thank you so much for doing that. The questions raised have been answered so far by Kevin.
Okay.
Thank you, Kevin.
So I take it then that if there are no further questions, comments, that we can adopt the annual report, and then we delete the draft, which is on its heading, and turn it into annual report and post it on the website as it is. We don't need to vote on this. It's enough if there is no objection, that then we can take it that we have approval.
It's Vint Cerf. I have one typo which has already been acknowledged. There was a math mistake with regard to the amount of funding to the NRIs. I'm sure I put it into the chat. That should be amended before you finalize the report.
Okay, well, thank you for your diligence. And it's great to have diligent readers, and especially of your caliber. Thank you very much for this. So we adopt then the annual report with this correction kindly made by Vint Cerf. And that brings us to the next agenda item. That would be approval of the annual budget based upon a recommendation by the Executive Committee. And in essence, the Executive Committee suggests moving on in the same way as last year, that is giving the bulk of what we have to the NRIs, and we continue with the same formula. We propose $2,000 to the national IGFs and $3,500 to the regional IGFs. And then we have the accessibility funds that is kindly provided by Vint Cerf and Google. And we have used that fund in the past also to provide fellowships to people from the DCAT with accessibility disabilities, but now we agreed with the DCAT to split that, and the fellowships will be taken care of by the Internet Society Special Interest Group for Disability, and we will only focus on providing captioning. That has proved very helpful and is very much appreciated also by the broader IGF community. Obviously, everybody can benefit from having real-time captioning available. So, and we will also continue to provide some funding to the IGF Trust Fund that is administered by the United Nations. That is our very simple proposal for the annual budget, and obviously we cannot put a figure on it, as that depends on how willing potential donors are to provide funding to the IGF. And as to Jimson's remark on the short notice, sometimes we receive the requests. I made that a little bit late, but as a recommendation from the Executive Committee under any other business that you would like to impose a deadline, but we will revisit that under any other business. But with that, are there any comments, questions, and suggestions on agenda item 5, approval of the annual budget based upon a recommendation by the Executive Committee? And Jameson, again, can you manage the chat or the queue, if there is any?
Yes, I'm checking through. Someone made a request with regard to how they can make payment, annual payments, and that link has been provided. The link on our website for donation has been provided. That's all for now.
Okay.
It's sorry to interrupt. It's Vint. Do you need a formal motion to adopt the budget, or have you made that motion and do you need a second?
We don't really need a formal motion, but if you want to be a bit more formal, I'm most welcome to do that way.
I'm not trying to exert any more bureaucracy than you already have. So if you don't need it.
No, I know it's more in the, for those more used to the US way of doing things, I know you're more comfortable if you have the kind of formal approach, which is not necessary under the Swiss legal system governing not-for-profit associations. But if anybody would be willing to move it and anybody else willing to second it.
Well,
There
I'm
is
happy.
a hand raised. There is a hand raised, Marcus.
Yes? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
There is a hand raised. Maybe after Vince has spoken.
Okay.
After Vince. Vince?
No, I was only, I didn't raise my hand. I only spoke, and I'm satisfied that we don't need a formal motion.
Okay, thank you. There is someone that raised his hand. Okay, can the person speak?
Hi,
Okay.
this
Yeah,
is
go ahead.
Judith Hellestein. I'm just I put in the chat is actually the DCAD. It's paying the sponsorships. It's just the money is being distributed by the secretariat of the DCAD, which is the ISAC Accessibility SIG, because the DTAG is not an organization that can dispense any money. So it's being distributed, and we had this year we had sponsorships not to come to the IGF because it's a virtual one, but we did sponsorships to help pay for people's bandwidth costs so that they could upgrade their bandwidth so they could attend the IGF. And then we also sponsored a hub in Haiti. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this precision, Judith. I should have been more precise when I said, but essentially, yes, you're right. It's the special interest group of the Internet Society that is sort of providing the Secretariat for DCAD. But I take it then there's no objection to this way forward, and we have an approval of the annual budget based on non-objection. And with that, we come to the fundraising crowdfunding, and Jennifer has already referred to that. And I just wonder, Jennifer, where you could give us maybe a more detailed overview of what you have done so far and which direction you would like to head us with this crowdfunding exercise.
Thank you, Marcus. This is Jennifer for the record. I believe there is still one hand raised. I think Uduma does have her hand raised.
It's this is Vint. It's Mary Udama who has her hand raised. If she
Hello,
doesn't.
can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello,
Mary.
can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, we
can.
All right. I'm sorry, I connected, but I wasn't getting what was happening. I didn't even participate in the voting. I'm very, very sorry. But that notwithstanding, I want to ask about requests for funding, especially those from my community in West Africa. Most of them that requested for funding for 2020, Gambia, Liberia, I think Togo as well, and I think three countries. I don't know what happened. I'm not sure they got the funding. Probably if there was anything that was wrong in the way they processed the funding, request for funding, or they didn't meet the criteria, so that we'll be able to tell them exactly what to do. So most of them were contacting me and asking me to intervene in their case to get their funding request approved. So Marcus or Jennifer, if you eventually funded them, please please can you tell us? Thank you.
Togo, I think the payment, sometimes we do have problems with the payments going through, especially with some African banks. It's not always that straightforward. But Togo, I seem to remember, has been made. But Jameson, do you have all that on top of your head?
Okay. This is Jameson. Well, like we processed Togo, yes. We saw Togo and it was processed. Benin, IGF Benin, yes, processed. But maybe Liberia, I don't think we ever saw Liberia. Maybe it went to, of course, the normal process. You first go through the IGF Secretariat, meet the criteria. Is when the criteria is met and is certified by the IGF Secretariat that is forwarded to us. And we now follow up, make requests for invoices, and then the executive approve, and then we process. So that is why when we get to the next section about they need to start on time, that's why it's important. You know, if the time the request comes in is late, and then the event has happened, then it will be challenging, making backward approval. So there are quite a number of processes. So maybe it got stuck along the way, but it will be good. Maybe we know where it was sent, but normally we expect that it should first be sent to the IGF Secretariat. It must be clarified. It must meet the criteria. Like, for example, did you submit the report of last year? And is that acceptable? Then once it's done, then we can take it off from there. But I never saw, we didn't see that
Okay.
Liberia or Sierra Leone.
Liberia and Gambia started on time. Well, I don't know what happened to Gambia that they did not get it, but thank you for clarifying, so that we would also have to do an outreach or do a skill, information pack for those that are applying, and they know that they need to get through this. Maybe when you get to the next item of the agenda, that brings me to the fact that probably if they come late and the number has already been met, I don't think there's anything anybody can do about it. So if a number is set for the year, if there's a specific number that is set for the year and is met, there's nothing anybody. But that of Gambia, I'm surprised that they started very early and they did not also get it. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for that.
okay, go ahead.
Let me just say, we have not said no to any request that we received. We have approved all the requests once they had been validated by the IGF Secretariat. But as Jameson said, there is a process. We receive a request, we pass it on to the Secretariat, said, are they good? Have they done all their required steps? Have they fulfilled all the criteria? Have they filed a report? If the answer is yes, then we consider the request, and usually within 48 hours, we tell them that we will provide funding. And then sometimes we have problems with bank transfers, but that's yet another story. But I think we have been able to sort out all of them this year. And Liberia, I couldn't recall either having received the request. So, but we can take this offline. We're happy to look into it, and if they provide us documentation. But normally, if you fill in the form, you can trust that we are dealing with it, and we do rely on the Secretariat to look at the request and to validate it, to say whether they are entitled to funding. But that's, and we come back to that under any other business with the question of the deadlines. But with that, Jennifer, back to you for the crowdfunding.
Thank you, Marcus. This is Jennifer for the record. Hopefully you can both hear me and also see my screen. Just a very brief overview on the crowdfunding platform that we've tested and also piloted this year. What we do use is Give.Asia. It is a platform that actually has very nominal fees and does use the payment gateway that we also use on the IGFSA website. So it's the Stripe payment gateway, and it's really good in the fact that it doesn't actually charge you very high processing fees. So it does help very much in the processing of things. As you can see on the platform, it is actually quite easy to navigate, and you can customize a lot of things. This is just the general platform we have currently up for the IGFSA. All these things that you see, this widget you see on the screen is also probably something that you saw when you made your membership dues again. You can set the frequency of when you would like it, or you can go to, donate once. Of course, the amounts you can change as well. And on this page is actually quite interesting as well. We're hoping perhaps in the coming year to work more with the NRIs we support and fund and other initiatives as well. And you can actually start your own campaign, which not only can, help your own NRI or your own initiative, it will, you can also earmark some of the funding to come over to the IGFSA account to further support the whole cause. So if anybody has more questions about this fundraising platform, I'm happy to answer them. It is quite easy to use. It's quite user-friendly, and it does have a lot of links to, of course, social media, which you would be able to then, further send your message out for publicity or just promotion and support. With that, I'll hand it back to Marcus, or I'll take a look to see if there are any questions. I see one in the Q&A.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. Are there any questions, comments on the crowdfunding? As you will recall, the idea of crowdfunding was very much at the beginning of when we started IGFSA, and for some reason we have never been particularly successful of getting this going, and hopefully now first steps have been made, and hopefully that will then bring some results. Are there questions, comments? And again, Jimson, grateful if you can look at the chat and manage the queue.
Marcus, this is Jennifer. There is a clarification from our Secretariat team, Kelvin. The crowdfunding on this particular website does have no platform fees, and only the payment processor, which is Stripe, does take the 1.5% at a discounted rate. There's also a comment in the chat from Aidan Federline. He mentions that crowdfunding is unlikely to prove lucrative and surely better to build relationships with well-sourced larger donors. I think that is the question.
Thank you. And lastly, in Berlin, we actually had a more sustained discussion also on fundraising, and something we actually never followed, mainly because of the all this COVID-19 situation. We never really followed up on that, as we never had any physical meetings. But I think in Berlin we said it would be good to involve the membership a bit more in this fundraising, and I think we really ought to make a new effort in that, and maybe also set up dedicated calls. And well, let's first constitute as an executive committee in our new setting. We have new members. Maybe they bring also new ideas and new energy into the executive committee. But I think involving the membership is really something we should push a bit and try to build more on common efforts to enhance our fundraising. Are there more comments, suggestions, questions?
Yes, Marcus, this is Jameson.
Yes, please.
Yes, just to add to what you mentioned with regard to how it started. At that time, we were inspired by the success of Obama crowdfunding efforts towards his election in his first and second term. So we're highly inspired by that, and we believe if we really do a good job of PR and outreach, we can get small donations So that is why I believe we should still work at it. We have not really exhausted the methodology of, though we have the platform now, we have the technology, but we need to do that solid outreach. And of course, not forgetting the big donors. And that is well taken. Aideen, that's very taken. And also Judith, it makes us a very solid point. So we should, and as Vincent mentioned, we need to explore all the opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, totally. Yeah. Are there other comments, encouraging remarks? Okay, then I think we have dealt with this issue, and then we come to the next agenda item. That's legally speaking an important agenda item, a release of obligations of the executive committee members. We have turned that in more user-friendly English. We had, to begin with, we had in French, on Swiss law, it's called la décharge, and that is discharge the executive committee members, but that led itself to different interpretations. So we found this new wording, release of obligations, that is, I think, easier to be understood and legally equally valid. Essentially what it means is that the executive committee members, if the membership thinks the executive committee members have adhered to the bylaws, so they're not personally liable for anything that may have gone wrong, and that's legally speaking therefore important under Swiss law, that the association says they have done their job and we can release them of their obligations. So can I take it that the IGFSA members agree that the executive committee has done a job in respect of the obligations under the bylaws?
It's been, we call these get out of jail free cards here in the US.
Yeah, correct. That's the same idea, yes. So there's no objection then to approve this release of obligations?
Yes, yeah, I've not seen any objection.
You made me frightened there. I thought there was an objection, but there's no objection. So I take it then we can approve this, and the bonne due forme, as you say in French, in legal terms, the executive committee members are released of their obligations, which brings us to the last under any other business. We have already alluded to that. The executive committee would like to propose, introduce a change in the processing of the funding requests and make sure to oblige them to submit the request six weeks ahead of their actual event. That is, if your event is in tomorrow, then we would not accept it anymore. And in the past, as Jimson said, we quite often had very, very, very short notice requests, but if we want to process them in due form, there may also be questions, we may have backwards and forwards. So it's, I think, in the interests also of all the NRIs that we have a process in place that allows solid working of the request and solid consideration. And we thought 6 weeks would be a reasonable deadline because, as we said, we also need to go back to the IGF Secretariat. They need to check, has all their paper been done? Do they have a website and so on? And they also have other duties. So it's a much easier and much smoother if you have decent time interval between the actual meeting and the request by the time it is submitted. And if we do that, it will be in everybody's interest. And obviously, what I said in the mail I sent out this morning, we cannot introduce that from one day to another. We have to give some lead time. And if you have a 6 week deadline, so 6 weeks lead time, would make much sense. And I also said, and there we were clear when we discussed it in the executive committee, yes, of course, if somebody has it can always happen that there is some unforeseen event, whatever. And if there is a reasonable explanation why 6 weeks could not be respected, then the executive committee would be flexible enough to make exceptions. So is the membership happy with this way to proceed, that from now on we impose a 6-week limit starting 6 weeks from now? Can we, yes?
Marcus, it's Vint. I just wanted to endorse the proposal. I think that the 6 weeks is very reasonable, and it's a reasonable statutory position to reject something that comes in with less time, unless, of course, it's some kind of an emergency and there's an explanation that the executive committee can understand.
Thank you. That is exactly with that proviso we said we would go forward. If there's a reasonable explanation why it cannot be respected, then obviously we are flexible. But with that, I think then we have a way forward, and from now on we will ask, and we will also add that on our website. And I think we can give you back some of your time. We have gone through our... Yes, please.
Yes, we have overwhelming support for that proposal on the chat. No objection whatsoever.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's good to know. That's good to know. Yeah,
number two, we got a comment earlier from Igfsa with regard to how to get organizations to be more financially involved in the mission of IGF-SA. So he commented on the chat that we could also consider trying to influence other organizations to spend their money in ways that satisfy IGF-SA goals, to influence other organizations. Maybe just like ISOC is doing, supporting accessibility, and others too can do the same thing. Okay. I don't know if you got that.
Yes, thank you, thank you. That's no, I couldn't, as I haven't got a visual of the chat, I didn't get that. So thank you very much. Is there anything else anybody would like to add? We have some time left.
Yeah, there are some other questions. For example, it asks about how you can get the audio recording of the summary from this session. I don't know if it will be posted on the page, on the IGF SA page, at the IGF website. I don't know. So there's a question on the recording, if it can be available.
I think even it's part of the IGF program, and who else is Chengetai still on the call, but I think there also a YouTube videos available of all the sessions.
Good. Then is there a database for all members of IGF-SA?
Sorry,
is there a database for all members of IGF-SA?
Jimson, this is Jennifer. I can answer that question. We do have a database. It's currently not public. If that is something that the executive committee and the members wish to make public at a later date, that can be done. But other than that, you can always send us an email at info@igfsa.org. I'll drop that in the chat if you have any questions about membership.
Thank you, Jennifer. Basically about database, if somebody wants to check whether their organization or their NIR is a member of the IGF-SA, how do they check? So we may need to look at that. Do we make a database public?
It's Vint. I do have a question. If you make the database public, I wonder if that violates privacy rules, especially the European regulations.
Yeah, well, that is the point. But we do see that even the IGF has made the participants list public. Of course, after everyone has endorsed that they authorize it. So maybe that kind of measure to have limited name listing could work. ICANN also does the same, making public the name of people that have registered, especially for a particular workshop or the other. So I don't know what others think as well. Marcos?
Yeah, well, this is, I think I would suggest then that we put that on the agenda of our forthcoming executive committee meetings. And obviously, if people on the call have a preference one way or another, they are most welcome to express it now, but this is not something we need to decide on the fly.
Well,
and obviously,
yes, there is a comment here from Aiden that organizational members, at a minimum, could be made public as they are not protected by privacy legislation.
So it's been, sorry to interrupt, two things. First, I agree with the point about organizational members. And second, Oksana says something quite reasonable. If a member agrees to be known, agrees to be made public, then you can make that person's membership public. Why don't you let that be a choice of the members?
yeah, that we can have an opt-in system. If you agree to have it made public, then it's fine, yeah. But that's definitely one way of doing it.
Yes, that's correct.
But now we're slowly approaching the end of our allotted time. Are there any other questions, comments people would like to address? But
Hello, can you hear me? This is
yes,
Mary.
I can hear.
Okay,
Yes, hello,
this is
Mary.
Okay. I'm just coming back to what Vince said and what Jimson echoed about commitment of organizations or to pursuing the goals of the goals and objectives of the IGFSA and by providing funding. First, I want to ask: would the IGFSA be is interpretation of IGF process part of the objectives? Can it be taken as part of the objective? Will it, if we're reaching out to organization to say, well, there's the interpretations need, apart from the sign language, other languages that are not normally the English language, if IGFSA would be part of, will it be part of the IGFSA objective? And that is for inclusivity, and whether we could also reach out to organizations to take up such support for the IGF process. There are some of our members that do attend, some communities that do attend the IGF annually, but sometimes they don't participate fully because they don't speak English or they don't understand English. So could that be something that the executive committee may think about and consider to see whether IGFSA can fund or support such process? Thank you.
Thank you for that. I mean, obviously, our scope article, if you look at our bylaws, is fairly broad. The purpose of the association is to promote and support the global IGF as well as the national and regional IGF initiatives It shall notably support the general objectives of the IGF, provide funds to maintain and strengthen the IGF Secretariat and national and regional IGF initiatives, and so on. I mean, there definitely it would fall under the broad scope. The question is then also just of availability of funding. But what I would suggest is that we actually set up a separate call, maybe later this year or maybe early next year, with the membership, where we discuss the broader fundraising, also crowdfunding issues, as this is obviously at the core of our interests. And I also take it from today's call that the members have questions and suggestions, and I think the more we brainstorm on how to achieve our objectives, the better it is. That is also crowdsourcing of our collective wisdom, of our collective grey cells. So that would be my very simple suggestion, that we set up a dedicated call with our membership to discuss these issues more in depth. Would that meet your approval? I mean, we don't, when we set up a call, then either you can make it or you can't, but we could maybe set up a doodle poll, see what would suit you best. But can we leave it at that for the time being? And are there any other last thoughts, last comments?
Sounds like a motion to adjourn is appropriate, Marcus.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
It's Vint. I think it sounds like a motion to adjourn is appropriate at this point.
And this is Aubrey. I second that motion.
Thank you. Yes, we reached, I think, the end of our time. With that, I would like to thank you for attending. My apologies again for the technical difficulties. My thanks to Jimson for jumping in so swiftly and competently to run the meeting and assist me when I couldn't see the chat. And thank you to Avery for managing the election very professionally. And thanks to all the outgoing members for their contribution to the association's work and objectives. And a welcome to the new executive committee members. And once again, thank you all. And I hope you have a good virtual IGF meeting 2020. Thank you and goodbye. The meeting has been adjourned. Thank you.